Okay, so you want to own a nightclub. You've walked past one at midnight on a Saturday. Bass vibrating through the walls from half a block away. Line wrapped around the building. Doorman checking IDs under red rope barriers. Strobe lights flashing through tinted windows. Bottles sparkling at VIP tables. Groups dressed up, laughing, money flowing. You think that's a real business? People always want to go out. How hard can it be? That's a reasonable thought, and it's also almost completely wrong. The gap between what a nightclub looks like at 1 a.m. on a weekend and what it actually costs to run from the moment you sign the lease is one of the most quietly brutal gaps in all of hospitality. Nightclubs close all the time, not because they ran out of customers, but because they ran out of cash while the line was still out the door. Today, we're going to walk through exactly why that happens. Every dollar that comes in, every dollar that disappears before the owner ever sees it, and what the ones who actually make money are doing differently. Let's start with the first thing everyone gets wrong. A nightclub with a packed dance floor is not necessarily a nightclub that is profitable. Those are two completely separate facts. Revenue is not profit. A nightclub can serve 800 people on a Saturday night and still lose money that month. The question is never how many people showed up. The question is how much stays after everything that has to be paid gets paid. And in the nightclub business, that list of things that has to be paid is catastrophically longer than most aspiring owners expect. But before we get to the ongoing costs, we need to talk about what it costs just to open the doors on day one. Before a single person walks through the entrance, the money is already leaving in amounts that would shock most people. The median startup cost for opening a new nightclub in the United States sits around $450,000. That's the middle. The range runs from $240,000 on the very low end for a small lounge conversion to over $1.5 million for a purpose-built nightclub in a major metropolitan market with full build-out. Here's where it goes. The biggest single chunk is the build-out of the space itself and the specialized systems required. A nightclub is not a regular commercial space with some speakers added. It's a purpose-built entertainment environment. The sound system alone for a proper nightclub runs between $50,000 and $200,000. We're talking professional-grade speakers, subwoofers, amplifiers, DJ booth equipment, mixing boards, and acoustic treatment to manage sound bleed into neighboring properties. That last part is critical because noise complaints are the #1 reason nightclubs get shut down by municipalities. Lighting systems add another $30,000 to $100,000. Intelligent lighting rigs, LED panels, lasers, strobe systems, fog machines, DMX controllers. The lighting creates the atmosphere that justifies the prices you charge. Then there's the HVAC system. A space holding 400 to 800 people dancing generates massive heat. Standard commercial HVAC cannot handle it. You need industrial capacity climate control, which runs $40,000 to $120,000 to install. The bar build-out is its own category. Commercial-grade bars with multiple stations, speed rails, glass racks, ice wells, refrigeration, point-of-sale terminals, and liquor display systems run between $50,000 and $150,000 depending on how many bars you're installing. Most successful nightclubs have multiple bars to reduce bottlenecks during peak hours. Seating in VIP areas, booths, tables, high tops, banquettes, VIP section furniture, all custom-built to maximize capacity while meeting fire code requirements, add another $30,000 to $80,000. Security infrastructure, cameras covering every angle for liability protection, metal detectors, ID scanners, panic buttons, and secure cash handling systems, add $15,000 to $40,000. Then there's the single most expensive non-physical asset you'll purchase: the liquor license. In major U.S. cities, a full liquor license that allows you to serve beer, wine, and spirits until 2 a.m. or later can cost anywhere from $50,000 to $400,000 depending on the state and city. In some markets like New York or San Francisco, liquor licenses are quota limited, meaning you can't just apply and pay a fee. You have to purchase an existing license from someone who's selling, and the market determines the price. In certain jurisdictions, that price exceeds $500,000. This is a non-negotiable cost. Without a liquor license, you don't have a nightclub. You have a room with loud music that generates no meaningful revenue. Initial liquor inventory adds another $20,000 to $60,000. Premium vodka, whiskey, tequila, rum, mixers, champagne for bottle service, beer kegs, all stocked before opening night. Then there are the costs that don't show up in the promotional videos. Commercial landlords want a security deposit equal to 3 to 6 months of base rent. For a nightclub-appropriate space in a viable market, that's $15,000 to $60,000 upfront just to get the keys. Business licenses, entertainment permits, health department permits, fire safety inspections, and commercial general liability insurance specifically covering nightclub operations add another $15,000 to $40,000 before you open. That insurance is extraordinarily expensive because the liability exposure is massive. Alcohol service, crowds, darkness, potential violence, slip and falls. The insurance premium reflects every one of those risks. And then there's working capital, the cash reserve you keep in the bank to cover your fixed expenses during the first several months while you're building a reputation and before the business reaches break even. The standard recommendation is $50,000 to $150,000 sitting in reserve. Most new nightclub owners catastrophically underestimate this, which is why so many clubs that open with hype and packed opening weekends are closed within 18 months. Before we get to location, there's a business model decision that shapes the entire financial structure of the operation. And most new owners copy whatever's popular in their city rather than thinking strategically about margins. When you open a nightclub, you have 4 fundamental models. The first is the high-volume dance club. Pack as many people as fire code allows, charge moderate cover and drink prices, make money on volume. The second is the bottle service and VIP lounge model. Smaller capacity, higher prices, entire revenue model built around table reservations and bottle service minimums. The third is the live music and DJ showcase venue. You book talent, charge higher cover. Revenue comes from tickets and bar sales. The fourth is the hybrid nightclub restaurant. Dinner service until 10 p.m., then transform into a nightclub. These 4 models create entirely different businesses. Under high-volume dance club, your revenue per customer is lower, $40 to $80 per person for the night including cover and drinks, but you're processing 500 to 1,000 people on a good weekend night. Your costs are higher too. More security, more bartenders, more liability exposure, higher insurance premiums. Under bottle service and VIP lounge, your revenue per customer is much higher, $150 to $500 per person when you account for table minimums, but your capacity is lower. You might only serve 200 to 300 people in a night. Your entire business model depends on attracting clientele willing to spend $1,000 to $5,000 for a table. That requires a specific location, specific branding, and often celebrity or influencer presence to maintain status. The live music venue model has different economics entirely. You're paying talent fees, $2,000 to $50,000 per night depending on the artist, managing ticket sales and splitting revenue with booking platforms, and hoping the bar sales cover your overhead. The hybrid nightclub restaurant model sounds smart, maximize space utilization across the day, but you're now running 2 completely different operations with different staff, different permits, and different peak hours. Most successful nightclub owners pick one model and optimize everything around that choice. The ones who try to be everything to everyone usually end up being nothing to anyone. Now, let's talk about location because this is where the financial trap closes on most new owners. A nightclub in the wrong location is dead on arrival. Period. Unlike most businesses where location is important, for nightclubs it's existential. You need to be in an area zoned for late-night entertainment, in a corridor where surrounding businesses and residents won't organize against you, with adequate parking or public transportation access, and near enough to your target demographic that they'll actually make the trip. That combination of factors limits viable locations severely, and landlords in those zones know it. Commercial rent for a nightclub-appropriate space in a major U.S. market runs $15,000 to $50,000 per month or more. And that's before you add common area maintenance charges, property taxes, and insurance pass-throughs. The true cost of occupying the space is often 20 to 30% higher than the base rent line. That rent figure is fixed. It does not go down when it rains. It does not go down when a competing club opens across the street. It does not care if you had a bad weekend. Every month, that number is due, regardless of how many people came through the doors. The cost of running a nightclub every single night of operation is staggering. Let's build out what a typical month actually looks like financially for a mid-sized nightclub in a competitive U.S. market. Say a venue with 600-person capacity generating around $120,000 a month in gross revenue. The first and largest cost is labor, but not in the way most people expect. Nightclubs are intensely labor-dependent, but the labor is concentrated into 12 to 16 hours per week, Friday and Saturday nights from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. You need bartenders, typically one bartender per 75 to 100 guests. For 600 people, that's 6 to 8 bartenders per night at $15 to $25 per hour plus tips. Security staff, doormen, ID checkers, floor security, typically one security person per 50 to 75 guests. That's 8 to 12 security personnel per night at $20 to $40 per hour. Then you need barbacks to restock during service, coat check attendants, bathroom attendants, VIP hosts, floor managers, and a general manager overseeing everything. Total labor costs, including payroll taxes and workers' compensation insurance, which is extraordinarily high for nightclub work, consume between 20 and 30% of gross revenue. On $120,000, that's $24,000 to $36,000 per month just in payroll. Then rent, call it $20,000 to $35,000 per month in a viable market. Utilities, electricity for sound, lighting, and HVAC running at maximum capacity for 12 to 20 hours per week. Add another $3,000 to $6,000 monthly. Insurance, commercial general liability, liquor liability, assault and battery coverage, property insurance, runs $4,000 to $12,000 per month. This is not optional. One lawsuit from an incident inside or outside your venue can exceed $1 million in damages. Cost of goods sold, the liquor, beer, mixers, garnishes, ice, runs between 18 and 28% of bar revenue in a well-managed nightclub. On $120,000 in monthly revenue, where approximately 80% comes from alcohol sales, that's $17,280 to $26,880 per month in liquor costs. When these costs aren't tracked carefully, when bartenders overpour, when drinks get comped without tracking, when theft occurs, these costs creep to 35 to 40% of revenue. And that difference alone can be the margin between profit and loss. Security costs extend beyond payroll. Off-duty police officers, required by many municipalities for venues over a certain capacity, cost $60 to $100 per hour per officer. Many cities require 2 to 4 officers on site during operating hours. Add another $2,000 to $5,000 per month. Licensing and permit renewals, entertainment licenses, music licensing fees for ASCAP, BMI, and CESAC, health permits. Add another $1,000 to $3,000 monthly when amortized. Marketing costs, social media advertising, promoter fees, influencer payments, event photography. Add another 5 to 10% of revenue. DJ talent fees, $500 to $10,000 per night depending on the name. Add another $2,000 to $20,000 monthly. Credit card processing fees, particularly high in nightclubs because of the ticket sizes on bottle service, run approximately 2.5 to 3.5% of total sales. Add it up. On $120,000 in monthly revenue, a well-managed but not exceptional nightclub is looking at $100,000 to $130,000 in total outgoing expenses. In strong months, that leaves $10,000 to $20,000 in net profit. In average months, the business operates at break-even or a loss, a margin of 0 to 17% in the best case. That margin has zero room for error. Now, here's something most people watching from the outside never think about: the revenue concentration risk in nightclub economics. Most nightclubs generate 70 to 85% of their weekly revenue during a 10-hour window, Friday and Saturday night from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. That's 10 hours out of a 168-hour week. If one of those nights gets disrupted, bad weather, a local emergency, a competing event, a fight that shuts down operations early, you've lost 35 to 40% of your weekly revenue in a single night. And all your fixed costs are still due. This is fundamentally different from most businesses where revenue distributes across the week. A nightclub lives or dies on 2 nights, one bad month of weekends, and the business is in distress. Now, let's talk about the part of the business where the real money actually lives. And it's not the $12 cocktail at the main bar. A standard mixed drink, vodka soda, rum, and Coke, sells for $10 to $15. The liquor cost is $1.20 to $2.50. Sounds like great margin, right? Except that drink required a bartender's time during peak rush, ice, a glass, a garnish, and contributes to the crowd that requires more security. The gross margin is good, but it's not where the nightclub makes money. Bottle service is a completely different financial category. A bottle of vodka that costs the nightclub $25 wholesale sells at the table for $400 to $800 depending on the brand and the venue. A bottle of champagne that costs $40 wholesale sells for $500 to $1,200. The gross margin on bottle service is 85 to 95%. And it comes with a table minimum that often includes additional bottles, mixers, and mandatory gratuity. A single VIP table on a Saturday night can generate $2,000 to $8,000 in revenue. The labor required to service that table is one dedicated server. The product cost is $150 to $400. Everything else is gross profit. This is why successful nightclubs design their entire floor plan around VIP tables and bottle service. The main floor and the dance floor exist to create the atmosphere and energy that makes people want to pay $5,000 to sit above it. Nightclubs that derive 40 to 60% of their revenue from bottle service and VIP tables operate at fundamentally different margins than clubs trying to make money on volume cover charges and well drinks. There's another revenue stream that top-performing nightclubs treat seriously: private events and venue buyouts, corporate parties, product launches, private birthdays, bachelor parties. A Thursday night venue buyout can generate $15,000 to $50,000 in a single night with lower labor costs because you're serving one group instead of managing a public crowd, lower security risk, and guaranteed minimum revenue regardless of attendance. Clubs that book private events strategically generate 15 to 25% of their monthly revenue from events on nights that would otherwise be slow or closed. Before we go further, if you're finding this breakdown useful and you want to understand how businesses like this actually work under the surface, subscribing to the Money Map and leaving a like genuinely helps us keep making these. Now, back to what's draining the profit before it ever lands. The nightclub business has a hidden financial risk that most owners catastrophically underestimate. Incidents. Fight breaks out. Someone gets injured. Police get called. Suddenly you're dealing with potential assault lawsuits, liquor license violations if overservice was involved, and reputational damage. One violent incident posted on social media can suppress attendance for weeks. But the real destruction comes from repeated incidents. 3 police calls in a month triggers enhanced scrutiny from the city. The fire marshal shows up for unannounced inspections. The Liquor Control Board opens an investigation. Your insurance premium doubles at renewal. The municipality can and will revoke your entertainment permit or liquor license if incidents continue. The nightclubs that survive maintain obsessive security protocols, train staff to de-escalate, install comprehensive camera systems, and eject problem customers immediately even if they're spending money. The short-term revenue loss from ejecting a table is nothing compared to the long-term cost of an incident. Now, let's talk about the thing that can destroy years of carefully built business in a matter of days. Liquor violations. Serving minors, serving visibly intoxicated patrons, operating past licensed hours, allowing drug activity on premises. Every one of these violations carries severe penalties. First offense might be a fine and temporary suspension. Second offense can be license revocation. And license revocation means your business is over. You cannot operate a nightclub without a liquor license. The nightclubs that avoid this implement strict ID scanning at the door, train bartenders to recognize intoxication signs and refuse service, install cameras at every bar, and run regular compliance training. It's not glamorous, but it's the baseline requirement for survival. Let's talk about seasonality because the calendar affects nightclub revenue dramatically. Summer months, May through September, are typically the strongest in most markets. People are out, tourists are visiting, outdoor patios are open. The holiday season, November and December, sees strong corporate event bookings and New Year's Eve, often the single highest revenue night of the year. But January and February are catastrophically slow. Post-holiday financial recovery, cold weather, New Year's resolutions. Revenue can drop 40 to 60% in these months. The rent doesn't drop. The insurance doesn't drop. You still need baseline security. A nightclub that generates $180,000 in December and then $70,000 in January is in immediate crisis if cash reserves weren't built. Now, let's talk about the thing that looks like the obvious next step after a successful first venue, opening a second location, and why doing it too early destroys profitable nightclubs. A club owner opens their first venue, builds a following, and starts generating profit on strong weekends. The natural instinct is, let's open a second venue or expand to a new market. The problem is that a successful nightclub almost always depends on the owner being physically present. They're managing the door, watching the bartenders, maintaining the vibe, handling VIP clients. When that owner splits time between two venues, quality at the first location declines. The general manager starts cutting corners. Theft increases. The vibe changes. Regulars notice. Worse, you've now doubled your fixed costs, rent, insurance, licensing, while cannibalizing your own customer base if both venues are in the same market. The owners who expand successfully do it after they've removed themselves from nightly operations at the first venue, hired a trustworthy general manager, installed theft prevention systems, and accumulated 12 to 18 months of cash reserves. Let's zoom out and look at where this all lands financially. The nightclub industry in the United States generates approximately $30 billion in annual revenue. Median annual revenue for an independent nightclub is approximately $1.2 million to $1.8 million. At a net margin of 10%, that's $120,000 to $180,000 in annual net profit before the owner draws a salary. At a net margin of 5%, common for average operators, that drops to $60,000 to $90,000. The owner of a mid-performing nightclub is working 50 to 70 hours per week, present every weekend night, managing staff, handling crises, managing vendors, dealing with city officials. $60,000 to $180,000 in annual net return for that workload in a business requiring $400,000 to $600,000 in startup capital is thin, and the risk exposure is massive. The top 10% of nightclubs operate differently. They run table minimums of $2,000 to $5,000, generate 50 to 65% of revenue from bottle service, and achieve net profit margins of 15 to 25%. A top-tier nightclub can generate $300,000 to $600,000 in annual net profit. But reaching that tier requires treating the nightclub as a system. Managed liquor costs, disciplined security, strategic VIP programming, and obsessive compliance. So, what actually determines whether this business works? Labor must stay at 20 to 30% of gross revenue. Liquor costs must stay at 18 to 28%. Rent should sit below 20 to 25% of gross revenue. Bottle service and VIP tables must represent at least 40% of revenue. Incident prevention must be treated as the top operational priority. Cash reserves covering 3 to 6 months of fixed costs must be maintained. So, is owning a nightclub actually worth it? If you walk in thinking the energy on the dance floor is what builds the business, it probably isn't. Most people who approach it that way end up working every weekend for modest returns with massive liability exposure and one bad incident away from closure. But if you walk in treating it as a structured hospitality operation with real cost tracking, real security protocols, real VIP revenue strategy, and real compliance systems, the nightclub business can be genuinely lucrative. A top-tier operator running a well-built club in the right market generates over $400,000 per year in net profit. That's a real return. That's a real business. The owners who matter in this industry are the ones who can do two things at once. Create an experience that makes people line up in the cold to get in, and run the numbers behind that experience tightly enough that the business is still standing 5 years later. The music creates the atmosphere. The discipline builds the business. If this breakdown changed how you think about what's actually going on inside a business that looks simple from the outside, please like the video and subscribe to the Money Map if you haven't already. We break down the hidden economics behind industries like this every week. Thanks for watching.